Okay, so this is going to go over how to convert the template subject into a cortical flat map surface. So that basically involves taking the three-dimensional surface mesh, introducing some relaxation cuts, and then using the Freesurfer command MRIS flatten to basically flatten out the cortical surface into a two-dimensional sheet. So the first step is to load Freesurfer. I'm using Freesurfer version 7.1.1 on the Martinos cluster. I'm logged into Graviton right now. Really any Martinos computer workstation, you can use the same command. So that would be export Freesurfer home equals user local Freesurfer 7.1.1. And then you can source Freesurfer home, set up Freesurfer. Okay, so that's loaded. So I'm already in my subject directory. I have an alias that allows me to just set the subject stir variable that Freesurfer uses to the current directory. So I'll do that, and then I can confirm. And yep, that's where I am. So I'm in my little FS directory. So the subject that I'm going to be introducing relaxation cuts and flattening is this Martinos average subject. It's a group template that I constructed from these 7 subjects so that I can project the surface data all into the same space for visualization. So the relaxation cuts will be introduced using tk-surfer. So the command we'll do first the left hemisphere and then the right. So it's tk-surfer subject name, LH inflated, and I like to load the curvature data on top. It'll render red and green based on whether a particular vertex is a sulcus or a gyrus. That just helps me clear out the medial wall and properly introduce relaxation cuts. Okay, so now we've got our inflated surface with curvature data overlaid opened up in tk-surfer. And again, this is for the left hemisphere. We'll do each hemisphere separately. So we're going to be focusing on the medial surface because we're going to cut out this gray medial wall, and we're also going to introduce 5 relaxation cuts. One here, one about here, one about here, one about here, and then one from the tip of the temporal pole back up to the medial wall area. So usually I like to start with the medial wall since that serves as a good anchoring point. So all you have to do is click around the border between the medial wall and this red sulcus, and then we will create one closed line with a cut, and then we'll fill in the area within here. So it's basically filling it in, but actually it's ripping out the vertices. So now that we have all of our points, we're going to create a cut closed line. Okay, and don't worry about how some of the edges are kind of jagged. That happens, it's fine, as long as you get the general area cut out. So now the next step is important. You click outside of the area that you want to fill in, which again, filling in means ripping out the vertices. So once you've clicked outside, really anywhere, it doesn't matter, then you can click this little fill uncut area button, and that's going to fill in here. So now we've just removed our medial wall. So the next steps is just introducing the relaxation cuts that again extend from this edge of where we cut out the medial wall towards the cortical horizon, if you will, where medial meets lateral. So we'll start here, placing one point as close to the edge as I can get it. And it's important to keep the cut points as close together as possible. tk-surfer tends to like to create as weird cut shapes as it can find. So it's best to not give it too much wiggle room there. So for this, so for here we had used a closed line. For the relaxation cuts, you want an open line. So that's just going to be the cut line icon. Okay, yeah, I don't know why it does that, but we don't really want that, so that's okay. I'll just do undo cut. Okay, there we go. This is the kind of line we're aiming for, and it's okay if it takes a couple tries. You can always just go edit, undo, cut, and try again. But for now, I'll go ahead and move over to the front, and I just try to make the cut as straight across as possible. Beautiful. Now I'll split the difference. So I'll try to take, 1/3 across from here to here and 2/3 across to split the difference. No real rhyme or reason in particular. All right, and the last step is to get the temporal pole. So what I usually like to do is just rotate the surface upwards ever so slightly so I get a better view of the temporal pole. Okay, that's good enough. So I'll just click from the edge, up and in. Should do it. Okay, now it's important to note that, I don't know how clearly this shows in the video, but there's a little strip of vertices that separate the cut from the medial wall. So in fact, if I zoom in, that'll become clearer. Right here. So that's okay. That can be rectified by just making a couple clicks around here and clicking cut. And that bridges the gap between the cut and the medial wall. And that's it. So we can save this cutout surface as a patch. So this is actually a 3-dimensional patch, and eventually we'll flatten it into an actual flat patch. But for now, we can do save patch as. And I like to save it in the subject's surf directory as, so I'll name it LH full patch.3D. So once we flatten it, we'll stick the name flat in here, but for now we save it as a full patch in 3 dimensions. Okay, hit OK. And now we'll go ahead and repeat these steps for the right hemisphere. But first, I just like to make sure that the patch indeed showed up. Okay, so in our template subject surf directory, we see that here's the lh.full.patch.3d file that we just saved. Yay. So now I'll go ahead and reopen TK-Surfer with the right hemisphere. You don't need to use the VGL run command unless you're also working on Graviton. It's just something I have to do because Graviton is weird about graphics display. But this is the portion of the command that you would need to rerun. Okay, so it's literally the same steps, just the opposite hemisphere. So we'll do the same, cut out the medial wall, and then introduce 5 relaxation cuts throughout the cortex. So now that I have my ring of points, I'll do the cut closed line command. I'll click outside the medial wall and I'll do fill uncut area. Okay, so now it's the same as for the left hemisphere. I'll start my relaxation cuts. Wow, that one almost never works on the first try. Awesome. Beautiful. No idea where that even came from. There we go. And I will again rotate the brain upward ever so slightly just to get a better viewpoint to the temporal pole. Alright, and there we have it, our 5 relaxation cuts. So just like with the left hemisphere, I will save this patch. So instead of LH, this will just be RH for right hemisphere. Okay. Great, so now we can see we have both the left hemisphere patch and the right hemisphere patch. So I'm in this subject surf directory, so I'll run both left and right hemispheres in the background. Okay, so both hemispheres are here. So I'll run both left and right hemisphere at the same time in parallel. Okay, and this will probably take maybe an hour per hemisphere, but since they're run in parallel, probably about an hour.